What if the very thing that makes you wise could also drive you insane? Imagine this. You're standing in a crowded room, and suddenly you see something that nobody else notices. A pattern, a truth, a shadow lurking beneath the surface that everyone seems blind to. At first it feels like a gift, this ability to peer beyond the veil that others can't lift. But then something chilling happens. The more you see, the more isolated you become. The clearer your vision gets, the more disconnected you feel from everyone around you. What would you do if you could see the hidden parts of people's souls, their deepest fears, their repressed desires, their shadow selves, but nobody believed you? What if this gift of sight came with a terrible price? Carl Jung, one of history's most brilliant minds, discovered this terrifying paradox firsthand. He called it the curse of consciousness. And by the end of this video, you'll uncover why Jung believed that seeing too much, understanding too deeply, might be the most dangerous gift a human being can possess. But here's what most people don't realize about Jung's discovery. It wasn't just a theory. It was a warning. A warning about what happens when you venture too far into the depths of human consciousness. And what you're about to learn might change how you see yourself and everyone around you forever. Jung didn't stumble upon this revelation by accident. It began with a simple question that haunted him for decades. Why do some people seem to live on the surface while others are compelled to dive into the abyss? In 1907, Jung was working alongside Freud, analyzing patients who seemed to be wrestling with forces they couldn't name. But Jung noticed something that even Freud missed. These patients weren't just struggling with repressed memories. They were being torn apart by truths they could see, but couldn't share. They were living in two worlds simultaneously, the comfortable illusion that everyone else inhabited, and the harsh reality that only they could perceive. But Jung's most shocking discovery was yet to come, and it would nearly cost him everything. Picture this. You're a respected psychiatrist, trusted by your peers, admired by your students. Then suddenly, you start seeing things that challenge everything you thought you knew about human nature. You begin to understand that every person carries within them a hidden self, what Jung called the shadow, and most people spend their entire lives running from this truth. The question that kept Jung awake at night was this: what happens to the person who can no longer run? What happens when you're forced to stare into the shadow, not just your own, but everyone else's too? Jung's journey into this dangerous territory began with his patients, but it quickly became personal. In 1912, after his famous split with Freud, Jung experienced what he called his confrontation with the unconscious. For 6 years, he descended into what many would call madness, but Jung saw it as something else entirely, a necessary journey into the depths of human consciousness. During this period, Jung kept what he called the Red Book, a leather-bound journal where he documented his visions, his conversations with figures from his unconscious, and his growing understanding of the human psyche. For decades, this book remained hidden, too dangerous to share with the world. Why dangerous? Because Jung had discovered something that challenged the very foundation of how we understand reality. He realized that most people live their lives wearing masks, what he called personas. These masks help us fit into society, maintain relationships, and function in the world. But beneath every mask lies the shadow. All the parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge, the desires we suppress, the truths we deny. Jung's terrifying insight was this: some people become so attuned to these hidden layers that they can see through everyone's mask. They can perceive the shadow in others, understand the unconscious motivations driving people's behavior, and recognize the patterns that remain invisible to most. But here's where it gets dangerous. When you can see what others can't, when you understand the hidden mechanics of human behavior, you face a choice that will determine your fate. Throughout history, there have been individuals who possess this dangerous gift of sight. Jung studied them obsessively, trying to understand their fate. Take Cassandra from Greek mythology, cursed with the ability to see the future, but doomed never to be believed. Or consider Nietzsche, whose profound insights into human nature led him to proclaim the death of traditional values, only to be dismissed as mad by his contemporaries. Jung noticed a pattern. Those who see too clearly often end up isolated, misunderstood, or worse. They lose their grip on the shared reality that keeps most people grounded. But Jung discovered something even more unsettling in his research. He found that throughout history, societies have always had a complicated relationship with their seers. On one hand, they're drawn to those who can see beyond the veil. On the other hand, they fear them, reject them, and sometimes destroy them. Why? Because these individuals threaten the collective illusion that holds society together. They reveal uncomfortable truths that most people would rather ignore. They point out the shadows that everyone else pretends don't exist. Jung called this phenomenon the prophet's dilemma. The very insight that makes you valuable to humanity also makes you dangerous to it. Jung didn't rely solely on historical examples and personal experience. He conducted extensive research to understand this phenomenon scientifically. In his studies of personality types, Jung identified what he called introverted intuitive individuals, people naturally inclined to perceive patterns and meanings that others miss. These individuals, Jung found, were more likely to experience what he termed invasion from the unconscious. Through his work with word association tests, Jung discovered that certain individuals had unusually strong reactions to specific triggers, reactions that revealed their ability to perceive unconscious content, not just in themselves, but in others as well. But Jung's most revealing research came from his analysis of what he called active imagination, a technique where individuals would engage directly with figures from their unconscious mind. Jung found that people with heightened perception often experienced these encounters with unusual intensity and clarity. The results were both fascinating and terrifying. These individuals could access layers of consciousness that remained closed to most people. They could understand symbolic language, recognize archetypal patterns, and perceive the hidden dynamics in relationships and groups. But Jung noticed a disturbing trend. The more clearly these individuals could see, the more they struggled to maintain their connection to consensual reality. It was as if their gift of sight came with a terrible trade-off. The clearer their inner vision became, the more blurred their outer world appeared. Jung's insights weren't confined to his era. Today we see the same pattern playing out in countless lives. Think about the whistleblowers who risk everything to expose hidden truths. Consider the artists who create work so revealing that it makes others uncomfortable. Or reflect on the friends in your life who seem to understand people and situations with uncanny accuracy. Have you ever known someone who could read people like open books? Someone who could predict how relationships would unfold, who could sense the hidden tensions in a room, who could see through the facades that others maintained effortlessly. If you have, you might have noticed something else about these individuals. They often seem lonely, even when surrounded by people. They struggle to find genuine connections because they can see through everyone's masks. They carry the weight of understanding truths that others aren't ready to face. Jung called this the burden of consciousness. The more aware you become, the more isolated you feel. The deeper you see, the harder it becomes to live on the surface with everyone else. But here's what Jung discovered about this burden. It doesn't just affect the person carrying it, it affects everyone around them too. Jung made a startling discovery during his years of research. Consciousness is contagious. When someone with heightened perception enters a group, they unconsciously activate the shadow material in others. People begin to feel uncomfortable without knowing why. Hidden tensions surface. Suppressed emotions emerge. Jung observed this phenomenon repeatedly in his practice. A patient with deep psychological insight would often trigger profound reactions in family members, friends, and colleagues. These reactions weren't always positive. Sometimes, the increased awareness would lead to the breakdown of relationships, the dissolution of groups, and the exposure of uncomfortable truths. This is why Jung concluded that the gift of seeing can be dangerous not just for the seer, but for their entire social circle. When you can perceive what others have worked hard to keep hidden, your very presence becomes a mirror that reflects their shadow back to them. But Jung didn't see this as entirely negative. He believed that this contagion of consciousness, while often painful, was necessary for growth and transformation. The question was, how could someone with this gift navigate the world without causing destruction and without being destroyed themselves? Jung spent decades developing what he called the process of individuation, a method for integrating the dangerous gift of sight without losing one's sanity or connection to others. The first step, Jung discovered, was accepting what he called the reality of the psyche. This meant acknowledging that the inner world of symbols, shadows, and archetypes was just as real as the external world of facts and objects. Most people live as if only the outer world matters, but those with heightened perception must learn to navigate both realms simultaneously. The second step was developing what Jung called holding the tension. When you can see both the mask and the shadow, both the conscious intention and the unconscious motivation, you must resist the urge to expose everything immediately. Jung learned that timing and context matter. Truth, delivered at the wrong moment or in the wrong way, becomes destruction rather than healing. The third step was finding what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to bridge the gap between conscious and unconscious, between what you see and what others can accept, between your inner reality and the shared world you must inhabit. But Jung's most important discovery was this: the gift of seeing doesn't have to be a curse. It can become a bridge. Jung introduced the concept of the wounded healer, someone who transforms their dangerous gift into a source of healing for others. These individuals learn to use their ability to see shadows, not to judge or expose, but to guide others toward their own process of growth and integration. Jung realized that those who can see what others can't have a choice. They can become destroyers, revealing harsh truths without compassion, or they can become healers, helping others gradually awaken to deeper levels of consciousness. The key, Jung discovered, is developing what he called compassionate sight. This means seeing the shadow in others not with judgment, but with understanding. It means recognizing that everyone's mask serves a purpose, and that stripping it away too quickly can cause more harm than good. Jung also emphasized the importance of community. Those with heightened perception need to find others who share their gift, not to create an elite circle of the enlightened, but to provide mutual support and understanding. Without this community, the burden of consciousness can become overwhelming. But Jung uncovered one final, crucial insight about the danger of seeing what others don't. He discovered that this gift comes with an intoxicating sense of power. When you can read people's motivations, predict their behavior, and understand their hidden fears, it's tempting to use this knowledge for manipulation rather than healing. Jung called this the inflation of the ego. Those who develop the ability to see beyond the veil often begin to believe they're superior to others. They start to see themselves as enlightened while viewing others as blind or ignorant. This inflation, Jung warned, is perhaps the greatest danger of all. Why? Because it cuts you off from the very humanity you're meant to serve. It transforms your gift from a bridge into a wall. It turns you from a healer into a predator. Jung observed this pattern in many of his colleagues and students. The very insight that could make them effective healers could also make them dangerous manipulators. The difference lay not in the degree of their sight, but in how they chose to use it. Jung believed that everyone with the gift of heightened perception faces a final test. It comes at the moment when you realize you could use your sight to gain power over others. You could manipulate, control, and dominate because you understand what others don't. This moment, Jung said, reveals your true character. Will you use your gift to serve your ego, or will you use it to serve something greater than yourself? Jung called this choice the moral imagination. It's the ability to see not just what is, but what could be. It's the capacity to envision a world where consciousness and compassion work together, where insight leads to healing rather than harm. Those who pass this test become what Jung called the conscious carriers of human wholeness. They learn to hold both light and shadow, both truth and mystery, both sight and blindness, in service of something larger than themselves. Today, Jung's warning about the danger of seeing what others don't is more relevant than ever. We live in an age of unprecedented access to information, psychological techniques, and tools for understanding human behavior. More people than ever before have access to insights that were once reserved for mystics and therapists. But with this expanded access comes expanded danger. Social media platforms use psychological insights to manipulate behavior. Advertisers employ depth psychology to influence decisions. Politicians utilize understanding of crowd psychology to gain power. Jung's question echoes across our modern world. Will we use our growing understanding of human consciousness to heal or to harm? Will we employ our insights to bridge differences or to exploit vulnerabilities? The choice, Jung insisted, belongs to each of us individually. And the stakes have never been higher. So here's the challenge Jung would pose to you today. What do you see that others don't? What patterns do you recognize? What shadows do you perceive? And most importantly, what will you do with that sight? Jung believed that every person has moments of heightened perception, times when the veil lifts and you glimpse deeper truths about yourself, others, or the world around you. The question isn't whether you'll have these moments. The question is whether you'll have the courage to integrate them wisely. Will you use your insights to judge or to understand? Will you employ your perception to separate yourself from others or to connect more deeply with humanity? Will you let your gift of sight become a source of isolation, or will you transform it into a bridge toward healing? Jung spent his life learning that the danger of seeing what others don't isn't in the seeing itself. It's in what you choose to do with what you see. The gift becomes dangerous only when it's divorced from love, wisdom, and service to something greater than your own ego. The shadow exists in everyone, The masks are universal. The unconscious forces are part of our shared humanity. When you learn to see these truths with compassion rather than judgment, your dangerous gift becomes a sacred responsibility. And in a world that desperately needs healing, that may be the most important transformation of all. The question Jung would leave you with is simple but profound. Now that you know this, how will you choose to see?